Hi, District 200 students. My name is Jill Walsh. I'm a professor at Boston University, and I do research on teenagers and technology. So I'm here to talk to you about your use of technology right now. And before you put me on double speed and fast forward to the end, because you know how it goes when adults talk to you about technology, please know that I am not here to shame you or to make you feel bad about your tech use. I wouldn't do that in general, but especially right now, while we're social distancing and we can't be together, technology is honestly all we have, right? It's the only way to connect to our friends, and connecting to your friends is so important right now. I want you to do that. So I am totally encouraging tech use. So yeah, you heard me right. There's an adult encouraging you to use technology for non-homework related purposes. Who knew, right? But here's the thing about tech, right? Tech consumption is kind of like food consumption. And what I mean by that is there's some type of tech that we can use and it makes us feel awesome. Like we're energized, we're happy, we put the phone down and we put the game down or whatever, and we're just like fired up, right? And then there's other tech use that, it kind of depletes us. It drains us. We kind of feel worse. We feel mad or tired or frustrated, or we start feeling bad about ourselves because we're using it, right? And that's the kind of tech use that I'm not encouraging, obviously. And I want us to try to use less of that. So while I am totally encouraging tech use, it's certain types of tech use that I really want us to engage in, all right? And if you've never thought about this, if you've never thought about like, gee, do I feel better or worse after I use this kind of this platform or engage with these people in this way, now is your chance. Like, this is the perfect time to figure this out. It is so important for your life to know what kind of tech use makes us feel better. And there's so many different kinds that can make us feel better. Like, it can be creating content and putting things out there in the world. And other times, depending on the mood we're in, it might just be like watching our favorite show, right? I have been watching so many old episodes of The Office right now. I have already seen all these episodes of The Office, but they relax me. Like, I think they're funny. It's just comforting to me right now. Right, so figuring out what works is great, okay? The one thing we know from the research is there's two types of use of technology that kind of universally make everyone feel good, so I want to talk to you about those. The first one is what I alluded to at the beginning, which is using it to connect with friends. People who use technology as a way to connect with friends, and even, and I would argue, especially in this moment, expand who they connect with, tend to be happier in using it, right? So you're probably already doing this right now, right? It's your only option. So keep doing what you're doing, but also think about expanding the people that you're connecting with. Maybe it's people that you have one class with, or you play a sport with, or take theater with, or whatever it is, but they're not like always in your group text, right? They're not the people you always play video games with. Whatever it is, right? Start to think about more people that you can bring in. Right now, because of what we're living through, our social worlds are shrinking, or it feels that way, right? It feels like things are shrinking. So anything you can do to use technology to expand your social world is a good thing, right? Now, the best thing about this is when we use it to connect, not to compete or compare ourselves, right? So there's a distinction. You can reach out to people and you're constantly comparing yourself to them. That isn't bringing happiness. Similarly, if you're constantly competing, like I have more likes, I have more this, like I did that, right? Then that also isn't bringing you happiness, right? So it's really connecting with the true goal of just reaching out and spending time with friends. Another thing we know from the research that often works to make people feel better, and this one is mostly connected to social media, although I guess you could do it in other capacities, but it's when we use social media to connect with the broader world, right? So I was talking about friend groups. Now we're thinking about bigger things, right? So in the coronavirus, epidemic, you might be thinking about ways you can get involved in community organizations and be helpful, right? Sometimes when we feel our most helpless and out of control, the best thing we can do is help others. And social media right now offers all of that, right? Opportunities to connect with an elementary school student who might need tutoring because of remote learning, right? Or offering to bring groceries to elderly neighbors, right? Who don't feel comfortable or healthy enough to go out, right? There's so many ways we can find opportunities to connect on social media. Now, it doesn't have to be coronavirus related, right? If you can't take more on that, find other things you love, other organizations or issues you care about, and reach out and get involved. Now, that's great and that's awesome, but please hear me. Like, I'm not asking you to like use this time to start a nonprofit, right? Or use this time to learn French or the tuba or something like that. Like, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you don't have a lot of focus on certain days, that's okay. You can still use social media to connect with the broader world. You can watch a concert that a musician gives from their living room. And let's be honest, in addition to great music, like who doesn't want to see what a celebrity's living room looks like? I personally can't get enough. The other things you can do are like, connect on like the Monterey Aquarium has like adorable like footage of like they bring the penguins out to like walk through the exhibits, and it's so cute to see them waddling along, right? Now you might think that sounds lame, but actually there's a ton of research that tells us that looking at videos or images of animals, particularly the cute ones, um, actually releases oxytocin and dopamine to our brains, right? It is the feel-good chemicals. It makes us calm and it makes us happy, right? So there's actually proven evidence now. So what I'm saying is some days you might be feeling really motivated. You might be, signing petitions, getting involved with things, connecting with tons of friends. And other days you might feel really sad and find it really hard to motivate. And in those days, just watch a video, find something to engage with that makes you feel a part of something, right? That's what's so critical for us right now. Figure out what works for you. Now, I want to just quickly talk a little bit about when I was talking earlier about that food consumption, and some of us, food and tech and some types of tech make us feel worse. It's not really the platforms per se. Like, I don't have a problem with any type of platform that you might use, but there's certain behaviors that sometimes happen to us when we use technology, and it just makes us feel worse. And I want you to be aware of it. Not because you could never have it or you can never do it, but so that when you see it happening, you can recognize it in yourself. Okay? Because again, we don't want to do this stuff to feel depleted and stressed, right? We have enough of that right now in the world. We don't need to add to it. So a couple things I want to highlight. The first one we know for certain is that mindless scrolling of Instagram, of your old text messages, of whatever it is, like it just doesn't leave us feeling very good, actually. Now, we're all drawn to this, and interestingly enough, we're mostly drawn to this when we actually are like totally exhausted or just overwhelmed or totally depleted, and we just kind of like want to sit there and zone out, right? That's certainly what it is for me. And it makes a lot of sense, right? It's passive. We can just like see it. It kind of like distracts us a little bit. But interestingly enough, the data would tell us that we never leave those experiences feeling better. We might leave them the same, but oftentimes we actually leave them feeling worse, right? More tired, more frustrated, more upset, right? So the less mindless scrolling you can do right now, the better. The second thing I want to talk about is something that often happens around technology use, which is rumination. Now, rumination can happen any old time. You don't need a pandemic going on to make this happen. But I do think there's aspects of this time we're in right now that make rumination worse. So first, just what is rumination, right? Rumination is when we as humans have a tendency to replay or overthink negative or bad experiences or things that have happened, right? So this is like if you have ever, at the end of the day, sort of been lying in bed being like, oh my God, why did I say that? I'm such an idiot. I wish I'd done this, or this person, or why did this person say this to me? Oh my gosh, they must hate me. Am I really a weirdo, right? And you've gone on that like hamster wheel. I'm going to keep talking about this hamster wheel because it really does feel like your brain is just like looping. You're stuck in a rumination loop, right? So now we've all done it, okay? And it's very, very common. But I think there's two things right now that are happening connected to the coronavirus situation that are making rumination even more common and perhaps even more stressful. So the first one is just the consumption of the news, right? Negative content is all around us, right? So whether you're like me and you're like actually bopping between like Twitter and news sources and social media and that kind of thing, and you're just feeling bombarded with information, right? Or you're somebody who just in your own newsfeed on Instagram, you're just seeing like everybody's talking about it, and someone's Nana is sick, and like, oh my gosh, all these people in New York, and how come these doctors and nurses don't have enough protection, and all that kind of stuff. Like, and we're just kind of getting ourselves more and more worked up, right? I have done this. I spent like a week in March doing this. I'm talking to a lot of students right now who are in this loop. Like they're worried about something. Like some people were telling me they were worried about like a summer program they were looking forward to being canceled. And so they spent a whole afternoon just like trying to read a whole bunch of stuff to figure out if summer plans were going to get canceled too, right? It totally makes sense why we would do it. And it is really important to be informed. But too much of this, can make us get on this rumination negative loop, right, where we're just like constantly taking in more negative content. Now, here's the thing about ruminating. Like, we know that when we do this, and I'm sorry to use this word right now, but it is really the most appropriate word, we're looking at a lot of stressful and negative content. And unfortunately, stress is contagious, right? You can literally catch stress from other people. Right? So you might have experienced this, like you're feeling totally fine and normally you come into class and people are like flipping through notes before a test. They're all panicking and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I should be really worried about this too, right? That's you catching stress from other people, okay? Now we do this often on social media when we see stressful or upsetting content. If you see a lot of it, you actually start to feel those things even if you haven't experienced them directly yourself. Okay, so that's one thing. So when we're reading a lot of negative content or a lot of scary content, we're absorbing those stress feelings. The second thing that can impact us when we're focused a lot on the news and negative content right now is that we know for a fact our brains are hardwired for evolutionary processes to focus more on the negative content than the positive. Okay, so what do I mean by that and how does that play out? What I mean is if you're on social media and you see like 5, funny or cute or uplifting positive posts, like, and you're going through and that's fine. And then you hit one that's negative or scary, your brain is actually going to remember the negative or scary post for longer and more intensely than you remember any of those positive posts. Okay? And that is just how we're wired. And so you just need to be aware of it, right? And try to limit as much as you can the negative stuff. Okay? Now, that's if you're ruminating about, the news and things that are happening right now in the world. A lot of times other people, most people ruminate about social things, right? Social interactions, things they said or things they got left out of, that kind of stuff, right? And that's really common in general on social media, regardless of what's going on in the world right now. It's really common on social media because we often feel like people will hold up their phone to me and be like, well, I have visual proof, right? It feels like you have proof that you got left out, that everybody thinks you're a loser, that your romantic partner doesn't like you anymore, right? You feel like you have proof because you can look at it, right? So we often tend to ruminate more about things that happen on social media or digital media than we do about things that happen face to face, right? So that's already a given. But add to that what's going on right now, right? Which is that we don't get to see each other face to face. We don't get to have that check-in to be like, are we good? Are things fine? And a lot of students are telling me right now in the last couple of weeks that they are feeling more insecure about their friend group and their social position than they have in the past, right? Just because they're missing that face-to-face connection. Okay, so if we put these two things together, we're more likely in general to ruminate on social media, and we're always more likely to ruminate when we feel insecure. So this kind of is the perfect storm to ruminate about things that are happening with friends, right, on technology. Okay, and so it's really, really hard to step away from it in any capacity when you're ruminating. But there are a couple things you can do. So first, the most important thing to do is recognize that you're doing it. Recognize that your brain is on that hamster wheel and try to take a step back and be like, whoa, I'm ruminating, right? And just give yourself that space from it. Now, if you're ruminating about, the news and that kind of stuff, I would really recommend that you schedule time once a day only to look at news content or scrolling through your social media feeds or looking at what people are posting on Twitter, whatever it is that you're using. Do it only once a day, ideally in the morning. Here's why. We know that when we worry at night, it impacts our sleep. And I know you all know how important sleep is for mental health, right? So I would recommend you schedule it. So what I do is 20 minutes in the morning. I look at all the news sources I want. I look at Twitter. I look at people's, I look at my Instagram feed. I sort of try to absorb as much as I can of some of the hard things that people are going to and reach out where I can. And then I try not to do it again until the next day, right? It's really important to be informed. It's really important to care, but we need to give ourselves some space from this content. Now, some of you might be saying, well, I don't look at news sources, so this isn't really relevant to me. I would urge you to look more closely and really be aware of what you're seeing just in your general news feed. It is absorbing this, the coronavirus stuff and the negative content is out there so much. It's so prevalent right now. So just being conscious of it. And if you need to take a break from it, find a break. Put your phone down, put on your favorite song, go outside, pet your dog if you have one, FaceTime with a friend, whatever it is you need to do to break that cycle when you start feeling yourself absorbing the stress, because when we get to that state of real anxiety about this, we actually can't be helpful and we really can't be empathetic. So it's actually more helpful for everyone if we can sort of set some boundaries around that. So anything you can do would be great. Now, if you're ruminating about social stuff, that one tends to be trickier because, again, we have that visual proof, right? So we are so inclined to look again and look again, right? So first, again, name it, own it, take it on. Second is think about whether or not what you're saying about yourself is actually true. Like, do you actually have evidence that everyone hates you? Or that your friend is super mad at you? Or you're the biggest loser in the world? Do you actually have evidence? And a way to do that and to think about it and is to do the trick a lot of you have heard. I use it a lot with students, which is like, would you say it to a friend, right? So if a friend came to you with the same thing that happened on technology, would you say to your friend, yeah, you know what? You actually are a big weirdo and everyone hates you, right? Would you say that? If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. Last two things. Another thing you can do is actually reach out to the person, right? If you're worried, if you feel like a friend you always play Fortnite with, like just hasn't been showing up and you don't know what's going on, reach out to the person. What we're finding is that people are handling this experience of, social distancing and staying at home and, grieving the loss of things so differently. Some people are reaching out to everyone and they're being super connectors and super involved. And other people, again, back to that shrinking, the world is feeling really small. And you might interpret someone who isn't connecting with you as like, they're mad at me, something's wrong with me, when actually it might be something that's really hard for them right now. So think about that. The last thing you can always do with any of this stuff is focus on what does work, right? So those things I started with at the beginning, wherever you're connecting with people, whoever you're connecting with, on whatever platform, if it's working for you, focus on that. So if something is hard or you feel insecure, find the good, focus on that stuff, okay? So overall, connecting with friends, expanding your friend circle network of who you're talking to, using platforms differently, connecting to the broader world in big ways and small is all really good. Trying to limit mindless scrolling when we can, and try to catch yourself when you might find yourself ruminating and think that through. Good luck with all of this. I hope that you're able to find moments of connection and joy in the next couple weeks, and I really hope you and your families stay healthy and safe. Thank you.